Our story begins in 1939 in a small town in Texas at the height of racial segregation in America. A young black boy named Bernard Garrett works as a shoeshine boy outside the town's main bank. Though seemingly focused on polishing shoes, Bernard is quietly eavesdropping on the conversations of bankers and wealthy customers. His goal? To understand the mysterious world of finance. Each night, Bernard meticulously records what he overhears in a notebook, documenting everything from real estate appraisals to market trends. One day, Bernard overhears a group of bank employees discussing how they estimate the value of mortgaged properties. He's engrossed until he's caught by a chauffeur who drives him away, warning him to mind his business and threatening to tell his father. That evening, Bernard's father finds his notebook and realizes his son has a gift. However, he somberly admits that Bernard's dreams of wealth will likely remain just dreams because of the color of his skin. Fast forward 15 years. It's now the mid-1950s, and Bernard, now a grown man, moves to Los Angeles with his wife Eunice and their son. They leave the racially oppressive South, hoping for better opportunities in California. The family stays in a cramped room at Eunice's uncle's house, but Bernard has big dreams. He refuses to settle for a factory job, much to the uncle's disapproval. One evening, as Bernard puts his son to bed, Eunice's uncle warns her that her husband's lofty ambitions might lead to disappointment. But Eunice defends Bernard, calling him a genius. "He'll get us out of this barn soon," she says, fully trusting her husband's vision. Bernard promises Eunice that he will give her and their son a better life. The next day, Bernard begins his real estate journey. He scouts properties across Los Angeles, aiming to break into the lucrative white-dominated housing market. He meets a white boy named Matt, who jokes about Bernard being rich just because he owns a car. Bernard focuses on finding an apartment building in a white neighborhood despite Eunice's concerns. His reasoning is simple but bold. Black neighborhoods are overcrowded, and there's a growing demand for housing in white areas. After some searching, Bernard finds a property in a white neighborhood, but there's a catch. The building needs significant renovations, and his savings are just enough to buy it, not fix it. Eunice suggests finding an investor and takes Bernard to the Plantation Jazz Club, owned by Joe Morris, a wealthy and flamboyant black businessman. Joe pokes fun at Bernard's serious demeanor, and their initial meeting ends poorly, with Bernard storming out. However, Eunice persuades Bernard to reconsider, arguing that Joe, despite his flashy personality, is reliable and well-connected. Reluctantly, Bernard decides to pursue the deal on his own first. He approaches the building's owner, an astute Irishman, to negotiate. The man demands $40,000, far more than Bernard can afford. After some back and forth, Bernard proposes an unconventional deal, $30,000 up front and the remaining $10,000 once the building is fully leased. Bernard plans to rent to black professionals, doctors, teachers, and lawyers seeking to escape overcrowded ghettos. His pitch impresses the Irishman, who agrees to the terms. Bernard's journey has just begun. With his intelligence and determination, he's taking the first steps toward dismantling racial barriers in the real estate market. But challenges lie ahead as he navigates a system designed to keep people like him out. Bernard is an ambitious man with dreams of carving out a better life, but his path is fraught with challenges. With Bernard waiting outside Mid-City Bank, exhausted after a long workday. He needs a loan to realize a significant opportunity, but can't get past the receptionist. "Mr. Reed can't meet with you right now, but I can take a message," she says dismissively. Bernard decides to wait, enduring hours on the bustling city street. Finally, Bernard gets his chance to speak with the bank manager. The conversation happens outside the bank, a stark setting that reflects the disparity between Bernard's hopes and the obstacles in his way. Bernard passionately explains his plans, but the manager remains skeptical. Frustrated and disheartened, Bernard feels ready to give up by evening. But just as despair settles in, Bernard receives an unexpected call from the Irishman, his business associate and mentor. The Irishman's tone is stern. "Did you use my name to try and get a loan from Mr. Reed?" Bernard admits that he did, acknowledging it wasn't the most orthodox move. Despite his initial frustration, the Irishman surprises Bernard with good news. He has decided to act as Bernard's guarantor. "I'm impressed by your determination," the Irishman says. "A man like you has what it takes to succeed in business." Overwhelmed with emotion, Bernard's drive earns him not only a loan, but also renewed confidence. To celebrate this small win, Bernard's wife drags him to Joe Morris's jazz club. The lively music and the vibrant atmosphere provide a stark contrast to Bernard's earlier struggles. Joe, the club owner, approaches Bernard with his characteristic sharp wit. "I'm not your white," he says, sparking a playful but pointed exchange. Joe admits his admiration for Bernard's grit. "I like seeing black men succeed," Joe remarks, hinting that he sees potential in Bernard. As Bernard begins his next venture, the road remains rocky. One day, while working with his cousin to repair a property he just bought, an elderly tenant confronts him. "What are you doing here?" she demands. Bernard calmly explains that he's the building's new owner. The woman, outraged, retorts, "This is a white building. You can't own this place." Her words sting, but Bernard's cousin's friend, Matt, joins the scene with an optimistic perspective. "Money is green," he quips. Together, they press on, repairing the property and proving doubters wrong. Their determination, however, draws the attention of the police. An elderly tenant has called, accusing Bernard of impersonating the building's owner. The police arrive, skeptical of Bernard's claims. But Bernard stands firm, producing a copy of the title deed. The officers, though unconvinced, leave with a patronizing warning to be more respectful to your tenants. Bernard's resilience pays off. The hostile tenant moves out, and her apartment is quickly rented to a sophisticated black woman. The neighborhood dynamics begin to shift, with Bernard's properties attracting a diverse and solvent clientele. His collaboration with the Irishman thrives. Together, they devise a strategy. Bernard handles negotiations, leveraging his articulate and persuasive manner, while the Irishman's face seals the deals. Their complementary skills enable them to acquire numerous properties, building a burgeoning real estate empire. Bernard's success transforms his life. He buys a beautiful home for his wife and solidifies his standing as a businessman. But just as he reaches the pinnacle, tragedy strikes. The Irishman dies unexpectedly. This loss marks the beginning of Bernard's troubles. The Irishman's widow, unwilling to continue the partnership with a black man, offers to buy out Bernard's share of the properties at a fraction of their market value. Bernard is outraged. "I own 50% of these houses," he asserts, but with no written agreement to prove his claim, his options are limited. Facing a grim choice, accept the low offer or risk losing everything in court, Bernard seeks allies. He approaches the bank manager for support, but is met with cold indifference. The manager is already aligned with the Irishman's widow. Just as despair looms, Bernard notices something that reignites his resolve: a sign listing companies renting offices in the bank's building. Most are financial institutions, including Mid-City Bank. An audacious idea takes root in his mind. Why not buy the entire building? Owning it would ensure he's never ignored or belittled again. This bold vision drives Bernard to set aside personal grudges. He reaches out to Joe Morris for assistance, ready to leave prejudices behind and seize control of his destiny. Bernard's journey is a testament to unyielding determination in the face of systemic barriers. From enduring insults to becoming a self-made businessman, his story is a powerful reminder that success often demands not just ambition, but the courage to challenge societal norms. As Bernard steps into the next chapter, his eyes are set on a future defined by possibility rather than prejudice. Maurice Bernard, a seasoned real estate mogul with expertise in black neighborhoods, proposes an ambitious plan to Joe, a fellow investor. Maurice wants to purchase a prime commercial building in downtown Los Angeles, a territory dominated by white ownership. He acknowledges the systemic barriers. Not a single black-owned building exists in the area, and it's not by coincidence. However, Bernard is undeterred. He assures Joe, "The banks won't dare to refuse us if we're the owners sitting in that building." Moreover, he highlights the bank's insider knowledge about real estate, which could pave the way for lucrative opportunities. At first, Joe is skeptical. He knows the hurdles they'll face, not just racism, but also the unwillingness of sellers to deal directly with black investors. To circumvent this, Bernard proposes a clever solution. They'll need a white representative to act on their behalf. Enter Matt, a timid factory worker who becomes the unexpected linchpin of their plan. As Matt sits in a diner, lost in thought, a waitress recognizes him from school. "You were ahead of me by a few years," she says flirtatiously, adding that everyone knew who he was back then. Her admiration gives Matt a confidence boost, and he finds himself sharing his newfound business opportunity. The waitress's respectful reaction strikes a chord. For the first time, Matt feels pride in his potential, and this moment solidifies his decision. With newfound enthusiasm, he declares, "I'm in." The training begins, and Matt's journey from humble factory worker to polished real estate proxy is anything but smooth. Joe takes him under his wing to teach him how to mingle with the elite. From perfecting his golf swing to mastering small talk with wealthy businessmen, Matt is thrown into a crash course on high society. Meanwhile, Bernard focuses on the financial side, attempting to teach Matt the complex formulas and multipliers used in real estate valuation. At first, the lessons are a disaster. Matt struggles to grasp the basics, staring blankly at Bernard's explanations. Frustrated, Bernard resorts to starting with elementary math. "Maybe we should review multiplication first," he quips. Surprisingly, Matt's exceptional memory becomes his saving grace. With persistence, he begins to absorb everything they throw at him, eventually performing complex calculations effortlessly, even during golf games. Joe sets up a high-stakes encounter for Matt at an exclusive golf club, orchestrating an accidental meeting with Charles Renault, the owner of the coveted downtown building. Over a casual round of golf, Matt impresses Renault with his polished demeanor, paving the way for a formal business meeting. Bernard prepares Matt rigorously for this pivotal negotiation. They discuss every possible offer, counteroffer, and financial scenario. Though overwhelmed by the intricacies, Matt relies on his photographic memory to commit every detail to heart. When the meeting finally takes place, Matt's transformation is on full display. He bombards Renault with precise calculations, breaking down financial forecasts and exposing inefficiencies in the building's management. Renault's accountant, armed with a calculator, struggles to keep up with Matt's mental arithmetic. "How do you do this in your head?" Renault asks, bewildered. Matt calmly replies, "I've got a pretty good memory." He even notes details Renault overlooked, like how shorter daylight hours in November impact vacancy rates. Renault, caught off guard and cornered by Matt's impeccable logic, begins to falter. Thanks to Matt's relentless negotiation skills, the price of the building drops from an initial $25 million to a figure that guarantees an 11% capital return rate for Bernard and Joe, while still allowing Renault a 25% profit margin. By the end of the meeting, Matt not only secures the deal, but earns the respect of everyone involved. What began as a bold idea from Maurice Bernard culminates in a groundbreaking achievement, a Black-owned building in downtown Los Angeles. Matt, the unlikely hero, proves that with determination, mentorship, and a bit of strategy, barriers can be shattered. This story is a powerful testament to ambition, teamwork, and the audacity to challenge systemic norms. After securing the deal of a lifetime, a commercial building in downtown Los Angeles at a reduced markup, the trio celebrates their victory. They waste no time leveraging this momentum, securing favorable loans to expand into white-only neighborhoods. Their rapid acquisition spree leads them to own 177 buildings, some housing over 100 apartments each. Their growing empire shakes the foundations of housing segregation in Los Angeles, giving Black families unprecedented access to quality housing. This milestone earns them significant recognition, including a visit from the Vice President, signaling the heights their efforts have achieved. By 1963, Bernard has become a towering figure in real estate. But a visit to his hometown in Texas brings him face to face with his past. Despite his success, Texas remains a bastion of racism. Walking through his childhood neighborhood, Bernard dons an expensive suit alongside his young son, drawing disapproving stares. Passing the local bank where he once shined shoes, he asks the new Shoeshine boy for a shine, only to be told, "I only serve white folks, sir." This encounter reignites Bernard's desire to effect change, not just in California, but also in the Deep South. That night, he confides in his wife about his dream to buy the bank and dismantle discriminatory lending practices in Texas. Back in Los Angeles, Bernard pitches the ambitious idea to Joe Morris. But Joe, ever pragmatic, balks at the altruistic nature of the venture. Texas laws don't allow Black men to manage banks, meaning their plan would rely heavily on Matt as their proxy. It's a risky move, Joe warns. Yet, seeing Bernard's resolve, Joe agrees to the plan, setting the stage for their most audacious gamble yet. The trio approaches Robert Florence Sr., the owner of the bank, with an offer to purchase it. Florence agrees, but with conditions. His son, Robert Jr., must remain as a credit expert, and the family retains 20% ownership. The deal is sealed despite Robert Jr.'s suspicions about Matt's absent partners. With the bank now under their control, Bernard reaches out to Black church leaders, rallying their support to identify reliable borrowers. Under this new policy, Black entrepreneurs and families begin receiving loans, revolutionizing their financial opportunities. A local business owner shares his success story. "Thanks to your loan, we doubled our revenue in 3 months." However, Robert Jr. grows increasingly resentful. Spying on Matt, he uncovers the true identities of the bank's owners. Furious, he threatens to expose the truth, warning that white depositors will withdraw their funds en masse, collapsing the bank. Amid the rising tensions, Matt finds himself caught between loyalty to his mentors and his growing personal ambitions. At his wife's urging, he pushes for greater autonomy, eventually persuading Bernard and Joe to let him manage a second bank, the Bank of Marlin. But Matt's inexperience and misplaced trust lead him astray. Ignoring Bernard's advice, he hires a questionable lawyer and rushes through critical decisions, setting the stage for disaster. Rumors begin spreading that the mainland bank has been issuing loans to Black customers. White depositors start withdrawing their funds, destabilizing the bank. Simultaneously, an anonymous tip prompts a surprise audit of the Bank of Marlin. Federal inspectors uncover irregularities, further jeopardizing their operations. Bernard, disguised as a janitor, steps in to assist Matt during the inspection, but the damage has already been done. Loans issued without proper scrutiny come back to haunt them, and the auditors uncover enough evidence to bring federal scrutiny to their entire operation. Robert Jr. capitalizes on the chaos, threatening to expose Bernard and Joe's involvement to the authorities. His vendetta culminates in a dramatic confrontation at Bernard's house, where he accuses the trio of fraud. Bernard calmly counters, revealing that Robert Sr. was fully aware of their identities during the sale. As the federal investigation looms, Matt, driven by guilt and frustration, admits to his missteps. His wife, who once pushed him to seize control, now offers her support, reminding him of how far he has come. But the damage is irreversible. Despite their financial collapse, Bernard and Joe's efforts leave an indelible mark on the fight against racial inequality. Their boldness in acquiring the bank and supporting black borrowers sparks conversations across the nation, laying the groundwork for future reforms. In the end, Bernard reflects on his journey. "We didn't just buy buildings or banks," he tells his son. "We bought hope for a better future." The story of breaking boundaries is a powerful testament to ambition, resilience, and the fight for justice in an unjust world. It reminds us that true change comes from bold actions, even at great personal cost. Matt Steiner, finally in control of the small bank of Marlin, becomes overconfident in his abilities. During a surprise federal audit, it's revealed that the bank holds problematic loans Bernard and Joe had explicitly avoided. Confronted by Bernard in the restroom, Matt admits his mistake. He hadn't thoroughly reviewed the loans. Worse, he'd hired a lawyer recommended by their enemy, Robert Florence Jr., without consulting Bernard and Joe. "How did our trusted lawyer miss this?" Bernard demands. "I didn't use O'Keefe," Matt hesitates. "Who exactly did you hire?" Joe presses. "Florence." Realizing Florence deliberately sabotaged them, Bernard and Joe are furious, but know they must act fast. While Bernard and Joe push to sell the Bank of Marlin to save their flagship, Mainland Bank, Matt refuses to give up his newfound authority. Desperate to salvage the situation, he recklessly buys back the problematic loans using funds from Mainland Bank. Joe receives the news from their trusted banker in Los Angeles. Who the hell would pay face value for those junk loans? Mainland Bank in Willis, Texas. Enraged, Joe and Bernard rush to Texas to confront Matt. They explain the gravity of his mistake. His actions have jeopardized their entire operation. But before they can fix the damage, the Deputy Comptroller of Currency arrives, announcing that Mainland Bank's license has been revoked. As the bank is placed under FDIC receivership, FBI agents arrest Bernard, Joe, and Matt outside the building. Bernard resists, shouting about the injustice of it all, but they're taken into custody. In Washington, the trio faces a Senate hearing. Their lawyer explains the stakes. Congress aims to use their case to pass stricter banking laws, specifically targeting black ownership of financial institutions. Under immense pressure, Matt cracks. A senator approaches him, offering a deal. Blame your partners for manipulating you, and you'll avoid 50 years in prison. At the hearing, Matt testifies that Bernard and Joe forced him into questionable dealings, painting himself as an unwitting victim. The betrayal devastates Bernard, but it's just the beginning. The senators offer Bernard a similar deal, admit he exploited legal loopholes for personal gain, and he can avoid jail. But Bernard refuses to betray his principles. Dressed in his janitor's uniform, Bernard delivers a passionate speech to the Senate. This is how black people are allowed into banks in Texas, as the help. The Constitution says we are equal, but where is the equality? Why is it so important to exclude an entire race from the American dream? His words strike a chord with many, but the all-white Senate and jury are unmoved. Bernard and Joe are convicted of misappropriation of bank funds and sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. Matt avoids jail time, but loses his credibility. Florence Jr. manipulates the situation further, purchasing Mainland Bank from the FDIC for for a fraction of what Bernard and Joe originally paid. While in prison, Bernard and Joe learn that their case has sparked national outrage, leading to the passage of the Fair Housing Act in 1968. This landmark legislation makes it illegal to discriminate in housing based on race, religion, or gender, a bittersweet victory for the two men. 3 years later, Bernard and Joe are released. Joe jokes as they reunite, "Figures they let you out first. They couldn't wait to get rid of me." Despite their joy, Bernard's wife reminds them they're now bankrupt, but Bernard reveals a twist. Before the Senate hearing, Matt admitted he'd been pressured to betray them. Bernard had one final request: sell off remaining assets and use the proceeds to buy 2 mansions in the Bahamas. The film ends with Bernard and Joe settling into their luxurious homes in the Bahamas, reflecting on their journey. Though they lost their empire, their sacrifices paved the way for systemic change, proving that the fight for equality often comes at great personal cost. Based on a true story, The Banker is a powerful reminder of resilience in the face of injustice. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing stories.